This podcast is brought to you by Curate Investments. Each of our funds is managed by different teams of highly skilled people we have handpicked to look after your money. That is the art of investing. For more information, visit us at curateinvestments.co.za. Curate Investments is an authorized FSP.
Welcome to Honest Money. I'm Warren Ingram.
I'm Pieter Villiers.
We're busy recording, and there's kind of a storm raging outside. I think that's building up, but that's not a reflection on the topic we're going to be talking about today. I think for me, I joked in the last episode that your face lit up, but I'm checking in, and you're still excited about this one. This is
the light from outside. the storm.
This is the stuff that you get into, the real meat of like kind of the heart and soul and technical stuff of financial planning, and then where the kind of investment people like me start to zone out a little bit. So I promise I'm going to focus and stay on topic today.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. So this is the third episode in our third series where we cover life stage planning and things to think about. We're now in that 50 to 65-year-old phase of life, so pre-retirement. And the third episode, we're talking about the tax and estate planning. The first one, we covered debt repayment. So how do you think about that? Second one, we covered investments, which is a fun one. So if you haven't watched those two episodes, they are on the channel. And today we're getting a bit more in the technical stuff that doesn't always sound very exciting and fun, but very, very important at this point in time. And a lot of things to think about. We're going to talk about using tax-efficient investment vehicles, things like trusts, wills, beneficiary nominations, insurances, and also just kind of making sense with maybe you've received pockets of advice over your career and you've got a scattered portfolio of different policies and investment products all over the place, how to make sense of everything and bring it together. Because at this point you have to start getting clarity, and then maybe one or two mistakes in this space that we see people make. Because there's always mistakes to be made. That's okay. That's how we all learn. And hopefully seeing this video, you would avoid those mistakes, the costly ones.
Yeah. And I think maybe just one general comment around structuring in that is we always should be aware of tax. It is a reality in our lives, whether we're going to pay income tax or capital gains tax, dividends tax while we're alive, estate duty once we've died.
Yes.
The truth is you can't avoid tax. Being careful and conscious about the way you invest so that you limit the amount of taxes you're going to pay is sensible. The thing that I see the mistake people make, maybe I know we said it last, but let's start on mistakes. One of the mistakes first is don't do all of your planning to avoid or minimize tax.
Yeah.
If you don't want to pay state duty when you're dead, it's very simple. Just spend all your money. Like that's the most efficient way of,
Don't own anything. Then it's easy.
You can save tax. And if you want to save income tax, that's fine. Don't earn any income. So the reality is if you have assets and you're going to move assets from yourself to the next generation, taxes are part and parcel. Actually, I would far rather have, very good high growing investments that far outstrip the amount of tax I would have paid if I'd been very tax efficient and had very low growth investments. And unfortunately, a lot of the time when you put structures and all of those things in place, they are surprise expensive. They come at a cost.
Yes.
And so don't be so focused on building the most fantastic structure built by some tax guru living on a hill somewhere that pays no tax. What you want to do is make sure that you're achieving an outcome. So it's about being intentional of saying, yes, I'm tax aware. Yes, I want to be tax efficient, but actually still the main thing is the main thing. And the main thing in this instance is growing my money the best way I can.
Yes. There are two things when we talk about investment return. We've got nominal return, which is if you download your investment statement, you'll see, oh, nice, I've got 10% per year. Okay, what needs to come off of that is taxes, fees, and inflation to get to our real after-tax, after-fee return. That's actually the return we need to look at. So taxes do play a role. I mean, they do decrease the effective return we get if it's not in a tax-efficient vehicle, but it's unavoidable. You're going to pay tax at some point. The only way you're not paying tax is if you owe nothing or if you don't declare it. Neither of those are good routes to go. It's tax evasion. That's illegal. SARS will find you. Don't do that. So tax efficient just means that we're looking at all of the options we have. We're considering each component, and then we try collectively make it as tax efficient as possible with the idea that we're trying to create the best life we want to live. Because at the end of the day, that is the ultimate outcome we're really after. It's just, enjoying the fruits of our labors and making sure that different structures we put in place complements that and makes that possible. Because I can't think of a worse scenario of being so tax efficient you can't enjoy life. I mean, that defeats the whole purpose of just working your entire life to get to a point where you can tick a box and say, look at me, I'm so smart, and you're just miserable.
Yeah.
And if taxes become such an obsession for you, you're not going to enjoy any money in any case because you're going to think about taxes the whole time. And I'm saying this because I have had conversations around this with people. It's usually a highly technical individuals that likes to just optimize everything. Life is not all about just optimization. It's also that is important, yes, like anything else, but it needs to be balanced with the overall thing. With that said, so let's maybe talk about a couple of considerations. So you now already in a transition phase where you've had kids in the house and they're now hopefully out of the house overseas. So your life has changed quite a lot. I mean, retirement is one big transition, but I think this is already a big one, almost hidden, that we don't always think about. So when you had kids in the house, you were financially responsible for them. A lot of expenses went into that. That's probably not now such a big burden on your budget. And we talked about how we can invest that. But something that we also need to think about is the insurance around that, because insurance is essentially just something that we're mitigating ourselves against a financial risk, something happening that will cause financial ruin. And stuff like life cover is usually quantified on how much risk you want to mitigate. So, for example, if you've got debt, to cover that. If you've got financial dependence, if you've got a baby that was just born recently, your risk cover will be quite high because you need to provide for baby school fees, university fees, extramural activities, food, all of that for like 18 years, maybe 25 years. That's a lot of quantifiable capital needed if something happens to you. But now baby is now 25, you don't need that anymore. So a lot of times what I see in this space, and it could almost be considered a mistake, is you've accumulated quite a lot of insurance policies over time, at the point it made sense, and maybe it wasn't revised recently, that you may be overinsured, meaning that some component of your needs have decreased, so you don't need that insurance, but also like maybe you've paid off a lot of your debt. You don't need cover to cover that anymore. It's not there anymore. But also your employer might have some benefits as well that you need to measure against your insurance. And you've also built up assets, and assets is in a sense of self-insurance. So it's a very important time to start looking at revising all of those insurances. And I'm not saying pick one policy and revise that. Collectively, you need to look at everything. What you've got through your employer, what you have through your different providers. Because I find that people at this stage in life have a bit of a scattered portfolio. They've got like, when I graduated university, I got sold this policy, and 10 years later, I spoke to this guy and he said I needed this. I didn't even know I have this one that I've been paying for many years. So it's making sense and tying all of that together. The previous episode, we talked about mapping everything on the macro level. This includes your insurances, your long-term insurance, your short-term insurance, all of that, medical cover. Medical aid's another one. Maybe your kids have been beneficiaries of your medical aid up until the point where they graduate university. They're now off on their own. So you can maybe revise your medical cover. Maybe you don't need as much anymore. A lot of stuff to think about. And what we're trying to do here is make sure that you don't overpay for stuff you don't need anymore, because life has most likely changed for you. And in principle, this needs to be revised every year. That's what we always say. At least that doesn't always happen. So I think that's one of the big things that people sometimes miss in this phase that could be costing them quite a lot of many thousands of rands every month.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other comment to add there is that it gets much more expensive as we get older.
Yes.
So if you've got a 20-year-old life policy, the likelihood is that the premiums have just been going up year after year after year. And maybe you when you took it out 20 years ago, 3 million rands worth of life cover was an enormous amount, and now you're paying like 11 grand a month for 3 million rands worth of life cover. I'm sucking an example out of the air, but it is worth reviewing, and certainly it's almost like a scale. As you get older, and you hopefully have been saving, your assets are getting bigger, and then therefore your need for life cover reduces. And so, one of your ambitions should be that you kind of slide into like the last day of work with potentially only life cover required if you've got a liquidity problem in your estate.
Yes.
But you shouldn't be needing life assurance to provide for anybody anymore. One maybe additional tip is if you've got a life policy that you don't need and you don't want to keep anymore, but the premiums are not bad, and you've got adult children who are earning an income, you could say to them, well, if you want to take over the life policy and you are the beneficiary of it, you're welcome. Because that's one thing people don't think about is, adult kids might say, well, for R1,000 a month, I don't want mom or dad to die, hopefully, but if they do, and I get 10 million rands a payout, it might be a benefit.
Yeah.
So it's only the it's the Alzheimer's hack for you.
Good point. Yes, that and that's why it's important to make an informed decision, because it's one of those things you can't reverse it. You cancel it, it's cancelled.
Yeah.
If you want to then take it out again at age 50, oof, going to be coughing premiums because you're much older than what you were 20 years, and that's how they calculate the premiums is the level of risk, and age brings a lot more of that. So insurances are important, and then wills. I mean, this one is important since almost day one, but it's very important now to also revise that, because maybe you have a will in place, but it's 5 or 10 years old. You haven't thought much about it. Life has moved on. Maybe some assets entered your life, some have exited. Your kids may have a different type of dynamics. So you need to make sure your will is revised. Make sure it aligns with your wishes. And then back to insurance and pension funds, provident funds, all of that. Beneficiary nominations is very important as well, because that's your instruction, first of all, to say, if I were to pass away, I want this life cover to pay out to this person, or maybe a portion to the estate if there's a liquidity issue. If you don't have that, everything pays to the estate. You're going to pay estate duty and executors fees. Estate duty can be 20 to 25%, executors fees up to 4%. You can think for yourself, your life cover policy, you can go do the calculation there. Sometimes it makes sense to pay a portion to the estate, but ideally, you're going to nominate someone like a spouse. That's a very estate efficient way to do it. But also, if we talk about retirement funds, you can nominate a beneficiary. I won't get too technical, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get everything. The trustees of the fund will ultimately decide who gets what. But it's still important that if you have to go look at your nominations, and first of all, know that you have someone nominated and that the right person is nominated, or the right combination of people. Because, sometimes it happens where you might have been married and divorced, and at that point you nominated your spouse at that time, and you have never revised that.
Yeah.
And now, if you were to pass away, everything pays out to your ex-spouse, and sure, that might not be
Your current girlfriend might be very unhappy.
what you were hoping to happen. So it's simple things, but it's those admin things that you just need to go and check and make sure that it's aligned.
And maybe there that because we need to if we talk about the will, you also want to make sure that ties up with your intent.
Yes.
So if you have gone and built trusts and all of those things, it always makes sense that you have a trust and a will that talk to each other and they correspond. But often what happens, as you said, is over time you've tweaked the trust deed because you were thinking about this or that or whatever the deal is, and then you forgot about the will and making sure. So make sure that both of those documents are current and aligned with each other.
Yes.
I love retirement funds for intergenerational wealth planning. I think it's a very good way for making money move from one generation to the next as tax efficiently as possible. And then again, the retirement fund nominations tie up because the one thing people think is that the will covers everything. The will doesn't cover who's nominated for your retirement fund. So they are separate. So make sure that if you've provided for one child in your RA and you thought you provided for another child in another way, that be careful. Those things could misalign. So I think it's just about cleaning those things up correctly.
It's tying all these loose ends together, and sometimes you think about it and, but that's so much work. I have to go and find all my policies. Well, yes, you do, because you're paying for stuff and you're contributing, and your life has evolved over time, and you need to make sure that all those loose ends. A will is kind of like tying everything together. Like we need to make sure that if we're building a pipeline, every pipe aligns. We can't have a blockage here or have two pipes pointing this direction and the other two the other side. We need to put them in the same sequence so that the water can flow through.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
And just thought of it just now. It's because of the weather outside. I'm worrying about my pipes at that. So we want to make sure that the fragmented portfolio most likely becomes clear in a clear, concise plan, and that just starts with clarity and understanding. And at this point, things are getting more complex. So we're always a big advocate for education, and like I love the DIY community. That's where I came from as well. But it also pays well to make sure you work with someone that knows what they're doing in this space. Because if you look at your investments and you look at your insurances and then you look at your estate planning and your tax planning, and all of that needs to align with each other. And every decision you make on one component may potentially influence 3 other components. So we want all of these gears to move together to make sure that our portfolio is optimized, not only for taxes, but also for life and retirement and quality of retirement.
Yeah, and I think don't be scared in a situation like this to go and pay a estate specialist, for example, to give them to get them to spend a couple of hours, pay for it. So it's it doesn't have to be you can still be the DIY if you want.
Yeah.
But that you just make sure that it all lines up. No one can be an expert on every aspect.
Yes.
I forgot about saying around things like your car and house insurance. As you build up assets, you were mentioning self-insurance from a life insurance point of view. You can start to do some of that with your car and house as well. And the way you do that is you can increase the excess that you will pay in the event of an accident. So typically, what happens with short-term insurance is you have an accident and it's your fault. So that's the deal. You can say to the insurance company, "I'm happy to pay the first 50,000 Rand, for example, of any claim." And you guys only kick in if the claim is bigger than that.
Yeah.
What that does for the insurance company is that they know that most claims might be 5,000 because you scratched the paint on the car or whatever, and you're just going to pay for it. You're going to fix it yourself. So they know they're not paying out lots and lots of small claims. They're only in for the bigger claim. Bigger claims tend to happen less frequently, and so they tend to give you a better price on the premium.
Yes.
And so that's a form of self-insurance that you can do on physical stuff, household contents, etc. And also, if you're earning well and you've got a decent emergency fund, do you need to insure yourself? Is it absolutely necessary? Can you, if you lose lots of phones every year, probably not insurable anyway. And the same with laptops and those kinds of things. So try and reduce the number of specified things that you have, and try and insure the things that you can't replace financially. You don't have the kind of firepower to replace. And I think when you're young, it's a different story. You try and insure everything because you don't have the cash to go and drop 20 grand on a phone or whatever it's going to be. But the older you can. And maybe the same on life assurance as well. We mentioned that you're reducing. So you want to top up, but the top up value of your life assurance gets less and less and less. So this is where you can be efficient on the things that are expensive. And I mean, I know I was giving you a hard time about trusts and the intricacies of estate planning, but this is the time to get involved in that sort of legalese of financial planning, because I think you can kind of use this period of your career to pay the fees to the professionals where you need them, and then make sure that capital is being directed to the right vehicles. In other words, a trust, or an endowment or a retirement fund. But you need like peace of mind going in that you're doing it in the correct way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time that kind of piecemeal planning happens early in life, but then we leave it. So I like your thing. I mean, I would say if we talked about balance as one of the keys around investing, this is probably the sweeper. This is like cleaning up and sweep up the scattered stuff. You want to get into retirement with life as simple and as clear as possible. You don't want complexity. It's going to be complex anyway. But clarification and simplicity is not a bad thing here. I would maybe just say it around investments. We didn't cover that in the last one. Is if you've got 12 investments at 12 different companies, you're not necessarily making your life easy. And a lot of investment platforms, for example, will give you a fee benefit if you consolidate at one place. So this is the time to do that as well. And if you've got 7 RAs at 7 different companies and you want to get to retirement, maybe you want those to consolidate into one living in USC.
Mm.
You get a fee benefit, life gets easy. So this is the sweeper phase. That's my I like your pipe analogy, but I think it's a pipe with a broom.
Yeah, exactly. It's at the point where life needs to become clear for you, and I mean, it all comes down to you just being able to make an informed decision and surrounding yourself with the people that can help you make that decision, and it pays to make the right decisions now, so you avoid big mistakes. The one thing I'll add is most people at this point, highly skilled, highly experienced, may have worked for a company for many years, sometimes decades, and a lot of times people actually don't know what benefits they have through the company, because most likely you'll have some sort of pension or provident fund. So, that needs to be taken into account if your retirement planning. But things like maybe your company is paying for your medical aid. You've got a medical aid subsidy, and life is great because you're in a very expensive plan, but you don't really feel it physically. You don't have to necessarily pay a lot of that from your cash flow. But that could change once you leave your employer at retirement. Then you will be liable for your medical aid expenses. So as you do your planning for retirement and you're trying to calculate how much do I need, always remember medical aid like medical care is a big line item. If we say like inflation is 5 to 6% per year, we always plan for medical expenses to be like inflation plus 4 to 5%, because it escalates. I mean, we all know every year when the medical aids publish their new rates, it always, it's a gut punch.
It seems to me around 8 or 9% at the moment is the last batch
Yeah.
that I saw. Yeah.
And if I'm getting a salary increase of 5%, it's something we need to plan for. So that's one big thing. And sometimes it's also like insurances that you have through your employer that you need to take into account when you do this whole sweeping up of things. And if you move employers, sometimes you can continue with the group insurance you had in your personal capacity. Call it a conversion option. So uh, if at this point in life you are thinking about moving companies because you're highly skilled, probably going to want to be snatched by another company, always take those things into account as well. It's not only the cost to company what is my salary I earn, it's all of the benefits I get through that. Sometimes it's employers share schemes where you've got maybe some shares in the company, and all of those things still affect your estate plan as well. If you do have shares, that's still a line item in your estate that's going to be liable for estate duty and executors fees. It's going to be taken into account. So putting together a proper estate plan so you can have clarity to understand, if I were to pass away today, what will my executive fee obligation be, my estate duty, my capital gains taxes? Um, all of those are the three main ones that you want to have clarity on, because also if you see your estate plan mapped out like that and you see like, geez, I've got a lot of money that's going to go to the executor. Now is the time to plan ahead and to say, well, right, how do we reduce that cost? Okay, let's think about endowments. Let's think about retirement annuities. Maybe, you've set up your will and you nominated an executor. Now is the time to negotiate with the executor. Say like, 3.5% is before tax is the standard, but if you've got a big estate, you can negotiate that down. Do it now. Don't
While
wait
you're
until
alive. Yeah.
because now you can say, like, well, listen, I've got all this X amount of assets. I don't want to pay 3.5%. That's too much. And then now is the time to start, like you said, having clarity and sweeping up these little costs every year. And how do we optimize that? You can only do that once you have clarity on everything. And then you go back into the macro, the micro level, and you make informed decisions. Capital gains taxes, that's the best type of taxes to pay. If we look at all, if we think about income tax, dividends, and the estate duty and all of that, it's your best type of tax, meaning it's the lowest one effectively. And you can also, everyone has that 40,000 Rand annual capital gains tax exclusion every year. No, it's not a lot, but it's something. So even a strategy like almost capital gains tax harvesting is to every year start selling off some of your liquid taxable investments in shares to benefit from that 40,000 exclusion. It's something to think about, but that's now again getting very like technical in the tax savings. It's not necessary to do that, but it's a strategy to also consider at this point, building up to that 65 level.
Yeah, he's deep into the expertise now. And I think also, I think that tax harvesting is a good call. Just make sure that you do it with investments that you've held for at least 3 years or longer.
Yes, yeah, good point.
Otherwise, SARS comes along and says, "Thank you very much. We think you're a trader of investing, and we'll take 45% of that money." So just be careful. But I think it works very well with maybe older investments that you've had where you know, let's say you bought an expensive investment a long time ago and you didn't want to change it because of gain of taxes, etc. You know, slowly reducing that, you know, every year and then giving yourself that tax benefit makes a lot of sense. You know, and just making sure that the investments that you own line up with what you want to do over the next decade or two, and cost is one. So you know, making sure the costs are fair and reasonable. And then they're in the right vehicle, as you've mentioned. So I have nothing else to add.
No, if you have too much money, and you've done your estate plan, and you're scared about, you know, all of the estate duty you're going to pay, there are ways to structure your. Going back to beneficiary nominations on your life cover, if that goes to your spouse, there's a nice deduction on estate duty there. When you pass away, you can start thinking about donating money to maybe your adult children or to a trust, because you get 100,000 Rand annual donation tax, and as a spouse, as a couple, that goes to 200,000. So these are ways to reduce that estate duty and executors fees that can get quite high at this life stage. That is now the time to get clarity on that and to position yourself to save more on taxes. Going back to our initial point, it's not only about that. So don't get caught up and obsessed about that. That's not life. It's not just about optimizing.
He's talking to himself.
I'm talking to myself here because I like to do that, and I sometimes go a bit too far. So I'm also learning, but it's ultimately just, again, making informed decisions and making sure that whatever product you have, or policy or insurance or investment or whatever you're paying for, serves you in the best way possible, because it's your money, it's your life, your retirement, it's your family. You want to make sure that what you have serves that bigger purpose of the meaningful life that you want to live. And that is the top level. And now on the ground floor, we need to look at all of these different things. But thank you so much for tuning in. This is a big topic, and we can go again for many hours if we want to, but I don't think Warren wants to. I want. We're going to bore you to death. Talking about all the different section, this and that, the deductions. We're not going to.
There's no more 4Q here.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the third episode. The final one next time will be about living beyond the paycheck. So in the situation where your kids are maybe overseas, or you are exiting your employment, how to start thinking and building towards that phase of life. And this now actually goes beyond the numbers. This is more like the lifestyle that we're going to cover. So we've covered all the technical stuff today. Next time, hopefully it's going to be a much more fun conversation to be had.
Actually, this was surprisingly fun for me. I didn't get sleepy at all. Thank you so much for watching. Please give us your questions. Please tell us what topics you want us to cover in the comments below. And once again, thank you to Sealand for keeping us cozy in these stormy conditions out there. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you. See you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Curate Investments. Each of our funds is managed by different teams of highly skilled people we have handpicked to look after your money. That is the art of investing. For more information, visit us at curateinvestments.co.za. Curate Investments is an authorized FSP.